On today's episode of Producer Points, I'm excited to sit down with a mixer who's become an indispensable part of my studio team. We joined forces on Rosie Darling's Lanterns, a project that truly highlighted his exceptional mixing skills. Beyond our joint effort, he's the talent behind the soundboard for artists like Alexander23, David Kushner, Jeremy Zucker, Christian French, Jake Scott, and many others, transforming each track into a masterpiece of sound. His unique mixing style adds a special flair to every project he touches. I'm not only fortunate to work with such a skilled collaborator, but also to call this genuinely kind and laid-back individual a friend. Dive in with us as we explore the mixing world of the incredibly talented Yanni AP.
Wow.
Thanks for being here, man.
Dude, what an intro.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm just
I meant
so
every word
flattered.
of it.
Thank you.
You know, it's nice to write nice things about friends.
I love that.
You know, I feel like as men, we don't do that enough.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. And I feel so fortunate to work with you too, man.
You know, and like I was going to put it in the intro, but I couldn't find like a good spot for it. But every year I look forward to your little like Christmas gifts.
Of course, man.
You're sending over.
Of course.
Like a very thoughtful, nice thing.
Yeah. It's similar to what you just said. You know, I write down like, grateful for working on this song together, whatever. And it's just like a nice little.
It's a nice touch.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I'm a fan of that kind of stuff. I think people like sometimes like turns people off. They're like capitalism, consumerism. I'm like, I don't know. It's nice to like send a note and like, you know, you're not sending out like iPhones.
Of course. Totally. Yeah.
Send like a nice little like snack or
little candy.
Yeah, little candy. Is it usually candy that you send, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Nice. I might change it up down the line. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I've done toffee for the past few years.
Keep mixing for bigger and bigger artists like you are, and you just start sending out champagne, you know?
Exactly, dude.
Like,
yeah.
You go for it. That's the thing, too. It's like, I find, I like to do little presents like that as well. And like, if, you know, collaborator where we do something like really big.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll do like a bigger gift.
Nice.
You know, it's like, hey, we made a decent amount of money this year.
Yeah.
Let's like show your appreciation. It's
totally.
Nice.
Totally. I used to kind of do that as well.
Yeah.
Like for if it was an album or a body of work like an EP, I would get a bottle of champagne and like deliver it to them or something like that.
Yeah. I think it's important to celebrate things like that.
Totally.
I think we all get a little bit jaded by it, where it's like it's our job and we're always releasing things, but like bigger projects like that, I don't know, I'm very sentimental, and I think it's important to take stock and be like, hey, you released an album.
Definitely, dude.
That's sick.
It's like a monumental feat.
Yeah.
To record, write, and release an entire album.
Yeah.
That's big time.
No, it's a big deal, and I try and remind people that all the time, where it's like, yeah, this is, you know, like have a party.
Have a party, man.
You know, like celebrate.
Pop a bottle.
Yeah, it's not it's not like egotistical to do that.
No, it's not. No.
You're celebrating you did something incredible. I don't know. That's just me. So I want to know your background. I know a little bit, but you know, from your days as a youngin' to how you got here now.
I grew up in Oakland, in the Bay Area. You know, big fat Greek family. So music was always a thing around the house. Friendship and family is super important.
Yeah.
And appreciation for good food. Like,
was it just you and your brother growing up?
Just two of us.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Speaking of him, he started playing guitar. He started taking lessons. And as the little brother, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Maybe I should start doing that also.
Mind you, for our listeners, Yanni's brother is Petro AP, another fantastic producer who will be on the pod soon.
Yes.
So, but continue.
Yes, totally. So he kind of started playing guitar and listening to music and like the Beatles and, you know, everything kind of came from him for me, honestly. And so I started playing guitar, and then I started forming bands with my buddies. Obviously, everybody plays guitar. Like it was a band of like 4 guitarists. So somebody needed to step up and play bass, and that was me.
Bass is so much more fun to play.
It's so fun, dude.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And Red Hot Chili Peppers are my favorite band.
Okay.
So I was like already kind of into bass because Flea is like a god to me. And so I started playing bass, did the band thing in high school. It was like a pop punk band, indie rock type of thing. And we did like some tours, small stuff. And we went to record our first demo at like the local studio. We knew somebody that like recorded all the local bands. Being exposed to that for the first time was like a revelation for me. It was
how old were you at the time? High school aged?
A little bit younger. I think like 13 maybe.
Oh, wow. That young.
13-ish.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So it was like, this is awesome. I didn't even know this whole thing existed.
Right.
And I was just like sitting right next to the engineer producer guy, watching him work Pro Tools and just trying to absorb it all. And from that point on, I kind of was like, well, I want to explore this side of stuff as well. So I got an M-Box, and even before the M-Box, I got like this weird Line 6 interface thing. It was just like one guitar input and like a gain knob.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Great, nice vintage tone. And I used that to record all of our songs. Like I even had a microphone that had an XLR to 1/4 inch input, and just like recorded everything through this guitar thing. It was
I'm like smiling because like that is exactly what I did.
It's like how you start.
Yeah,
it's how you kind of just figure it out.
I used to use like I had like a sound card in my PC that like I would like I jerry rigged to like be able to record other things.
There you go, dude.
But you do what you got to do, you know.
Totally, because it's just like such a fascinating world when you first learn about it, and you're just like as a kid, like how do I do this? This is amazing.
Yeah,
I can record myself. I can like this is a whole new world. And so I was super into it, and I was recording my band's demos and mixing it. Like I did the concept of mixing wasn't even a thing.
No.
Or definitely mastering was not a thing at all. Like the first thing that we released that I recorded and kind of produced, like it's so quiet because I didn't even know what mastering was.
Right.
Like I don't think it's on Spotify.
You just turn the volume knob up, right?
Just like, turn the volume knob up.
Yeah. What else would you do?
Totally. They're pretty rough. And like one of the songs, I exported it with like an extra 3 minutes of silence at the end, and we didn't even like catch on to that until it was out.
Oh my!
And we were like, "There's like 3 minutes of silence at the end of the song here." So there was I've come a long way.
Yeah,
come a long way. And so I was recording other bands as well, and like any musician in our high school, there were a couple singers that I would have over, and like we would record vocals.
That's
like
so awesome,
an acoustic thing. So I realized that I really like this side of the music industry, like engineering, producing. And like for me, my mom was always adamant on making sure I go to college. She was like, you can study whatever you want, but like you got to go to college. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I could do this for college. So I went to Berkeley in Boston, and I did the whole Berkeley College of Music thing. I studied engineering, music production there, and I played bass there as well. And, Berkeley, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
It was awesome, though. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, everyone that goes there, it's like, even though most people will like drop out, but like everyone speaks highly of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
There's a reason why there's so many people that I work with all the time that came out from the Berkeley system.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And the saying is like, if you graduate from Berkeley, then you've kind of like failed in a way, because the real like pros, they'll like go for it like a year
or two,
and then they're touring with John Mayer or something like that. Not me. I graduated and I really liked it. They've got some crazy studios there, and it was great to like learn the traditional side of stuff, like how to work on a console,
right?
Like how to record live bands, record on tape, all that cool like classic stuff that you can't really learn at home on YouTube.
No, because you just don't have access to the stuff. Like I know how to work on a console, but barely.
Totally.
Because it's like the few times I'm at a studio.
Exactly.
It's like, and that's the benefit of Berkeley, especially on the engineering production side.
Yeah.
It's just having access to everything there. That's what you're paying for at the end of the day too.
You're right. You're paying for the access to the equipment and tools. Yeah. And you're also paying for the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the connections that I got from Berkeley was a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
Like having a crew of people right when I graduated that all moved to LA.
Yeah.
Awesome. And like same with Nashville and New York. Like I know I've got homies in all of these places that are doing music professionally, and I could hit them up to like collaborate or whatever.
Yeah.
Just to hang even. So that the community that came from Berkeley was really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the strongest aspect of it, where it's like every time I speak to someone from Berkeley, it's like, oh yeah, I work mostly with like my other Berkeley people.
Yeah.
That like, you find your crew and you come out to LA together, and it's like that's the same story over and over again, which I think is a great story.
It's awesome.
Community is really nice. You know?
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Especially in this very small music industry.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So you graduate from Berkeley.
Graduated from Berkeley.
How soon do you come out to LA?
Right away.
Right away. Okay.
So I graduated, and then like I probably spent a month back in the Bay, like looking for apartments in LA.
Right.
And then I moved to LA with my band. So granted, this whole time I'm still doing the band thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like we're all in Boston doing the band thing, recording and touring and playing shows. Then once we graduate, we all move to LA to continue being in a band. And on the side, I'm still like recording and mixing and producing, but like the band is kind of the focus.
Right.
And, we're in LA, and after like a couple years of being in LA, the band kind of starts to dissolve.
Right.
And it's fine. It's all good. Everybody kind of starts doing their own thing. I got more into producing. So I was like, I kind of want to focus on this a little bit. Our drummer, JT, he was an engineer at Interscope, and he started working with the artist Black.
Okay.
And he still is working with Black. And so like that was an incredible opportunity that he started going down, and like a road that he started going down. And our singer, Ari, he started doing a solo project.
Right.
And our guitarist, Teo, started being a mastering engineer.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Like we all still work together.
Yeah.
All the time.
I didn't know you and Taylor were in the band together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's really cool to know.
Yeah. And we've known each other for a really long time.
Right. Yeah, I knew that, but that's really cool.
Yeah. We were in the band together. And yeah, so the band kind of dissolved. And then at that point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and produce full time. Right. And I was doing like pop sessions. But like I didn't love doing those sessions.
No.
It was a little stressful for me. It's not my vibe. During those sessions, I'm not the guy coming up with lyrics or melodies or even parts. Like I was the person at the computer tweaking EQs and sounds.
You did your thing later on and like would produce it up and like.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And then I did that for like a few years. And then I realized like in 2019 or 2018, I just don't want to be doing these sessions anymore. What I really like to do is mixing.
Right.
I'm just going to focus on that. That's when I just doubled down on mixing. No production, nothing else. I've been doing it ever since.
I think the mixing thing is such a different avenue to go down, right? Where it's not like you're a producer or you're a writer. Like, I'll just like get in with other people. Basically, you work for free a bunch. Yeah. Right? As a producer and a songwriter. Totally. How was that transition to mixing? How did you reach out to your first clients? How did you slowly build that up?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I was already producing for a bunch of people. I had a little community of artists that I was producing for.
Right.
So once I committed to mixing, I just reached out to them and I was like, hey, by the way, like I'm just mixing nowadays. Let me know if you need any songs mixed. Right. And in my little community of musicians and artists, I was the only mixer, really.
Right.
So right off the get-go, I had a default clientele.
Right.
So like all my homies all have their own artist projects and everything needs to get mixed. So they only know one mixer. Right. And that was me. So I was just mixing all the stuff from the get-go.
And what's, what advice would you give someone who's doing that, right? Where it's like, are you working for free and just hoping to get some back end? Are you doing it for, much less than what you're obviously doing it for now? What strategy did you use to help grow that client base?
I think mix as much as you can.
Yeah.
Like mix everything you can. I think the priority is to mix as many records as possible.
Right.
And hone your skills as a mixer rather than try and make income off of mixing. That comes second. So I think the first thing is just like mix everything under the sun.
Right.
Whatever that takes. Mix it for free. Great. Mix it after your day job, like from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Do it. Remove as many obstacles from you and mixing the song.
Yeah.
So if that's monetary, get a day job.
Right.
Get another income source. If it's like you don't know any musicians or artists, start going to shows and start making those connections, or move to a place where there are a lot of artists. Just remove everything between you and the mix.
Yeah, that's really incredible advice. I think people rightfully want to just get paid for everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's when you're a beginner mixer, you're obviously going to be mostly working with indie artists with low to almost no budgets.
No budget, dude.
You're not
100%.
I don't know. I would say it's pretty impossible for like someone who's never mixed a record before to start mixing a major label artist. It's just like not going to happen.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Totally.
And so you need to basically, again, it's just like how producers and songwriters work, where it's like you have to do a lot of stuff for free, again, to hone your skills, to get your name out there. You know, I can't tell you how many times like I found mixers or listening to a new artist and be like, this mix is dope.
Yeah.
And then, you know, doing a little digging, be like, oh, it's this mixer that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And then do deeper mixing. And it's like, oh, every record they've done sounds great. Even though maybe like I don't like the music.
Sure.
But they all sound great.
You can separate that.
Yeah. And I think that's really phenomenal advice. Just you have to put yourself out there. And that's the one benefit about mixing, where you're not really working with other people, so you can work around other things.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Like being a songwriter producer, it's a little bit more difficult. Like when I first came out here, I worked a part-time job, you know, but I had to do a job where I was like, okay, sessions are usually from 12 or 1 to like 6 or 7.
Yep.
And I either have to work late at night or I have to work really early. I chose to work early because I'm a morning person.
Nice.
So I was working from like 6 to like 10 or 11.
Wow.
In the mornings, and then I would like do sessions and then do that whole thing. But yeah, it's like I think it's like sacrifices that people are worried about the optics of it, which always amazes me.
Yeah.
Where it's like I've never had someone like yeah, I got a part-time job and been like, ick.
Totally, dude.
I don't get like
totally. The goal is not to do music full time.
Right.
Like so many people are like, how do I do it full time? Like why is that your goal?
Right.
Like the goal is to like make music.
Right.
Like if you don't have enough time to make music, then you need to adjust your schedule or whatever, you know. Right. That's a different life choice, but the goal is to just make good music.
It's also easier to make good music when you're not stressed about money all the time.
So true. So true.
It's like if you're worried that like, oh, like I have to, the second I shifted my ideology of writing and producing from like I got to make a hit every day to like I'm just making music today.
Yeah.
That's when I started doing so much better.
Nice.
You know, and it's because like I went from like working a part-time job to then being able to not work one, but then I needed a part-time job again. I was just like, okay, having a part-time job, I don't have one anymore, luckily, but like that was like a really good thing for me to like, be like, okay, I have a little bit of breathing room now.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
Really, really phenomenal advice. I truly mean that.
Nice.
So I wanted to talk a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like a really key moment and turning point in your career was when Alexander 23 like broke off.
100%.
Yeah. And so how did that connection happen? How did he bring you on to mix and everything?
Yeah. So when he moved to LA, Alexander 23 moved to LA, he was already homies with my brother, Petro. Right. Because they've worked together in the past, and Alexander 23 was in a band that my brother like worked with. And so when he moved to LA, the only person he really knew was my brother. And so one day we all kind of just hung out, the three of us. And my brother was like, hey, like you should have Yanni mix your songs or whatever. And so I started mixing his songs. And it was really low key.
Right.
Like, yeah, I was just mixing his stuff.
Yeah.
And we were also in a band together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was me, Alexander 23, my brother, and like 4 or 5 other people. We were called.
Was that the Top Punk?
That was Top Punk.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know Alexander was in that too.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of like were working together in that world, and at the same time, I was mixing the demos that he was writing and producing, and he was producing for some other artists as well.
Yeah.
And like I was the only mixer he knew, and we were friends. So he was like, here, like maybe you could mix this stuff. And then his stuff started blowing up.
Right.
And he got signed, and the label actually had the songs remixed by somebody else.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Which I mean, cause I was,
it's the typical label process.
It's the label process.
Like, oh, who's this guy who's mixing it?
Yeah.
We're going to get, so-and-so to mix it.
Yeah.
But
we need a name brand to mix this.
And the counterpoint too is like, y'all fell in love with these songs.
That's true.
How they were.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing to me where it's like, I'll never understand that. Sometimes it's a success story, obviously.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like the records were doing great.
Uh-huh.
you fell in love with them. Like, why are we changing it?
Totally.
But anyway,
totally.
that's just my 2 cents. You can stay quiet on it. I know
Yeah. I mean, I had mixed like, there were maybe 2 songs of his that I had mixed that they had a different mixer remix them. But yeah, I was bummed, of course.
Right.
But after that project came out that I didn't mix, and after it kind of did a little bit better, Alexander kind of had gained a bit of a repertoire with his A&R and the label.
Right.
And for the next project, he had a little bit more say in who he worked with. So, being the great dude that he is, he was like, let's go back to Yanni. Like, and I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, like those mixes that you did for him, like that's when I found out you were a mixer. And I don't remember our first song that got mixed together. I don't know, David Arkwright might have brought you in, or I don't remember what it was.
I'm not sure either.
But you mixed something, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! Like, I love how you do it."
Nice, dude.
Anyway,
I love that.
It's just like, you know, that's why I remember like those Alexander 23 records really blew you both up.
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important that was for me, because like, I think every client that I've ever gotten is somehow connected back to Alexander 23.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so huge.
I mean, that's how it is for almost every songwriter, producer, mixer, where it's like you do the thing that blows you up, and then it's like,
you're right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's what we all strive for when we're doing this job.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like it only takes one.
That's true. You're right.
That's what it is.
That's
it takes
true.
the one, and then like your life kind of does change.
Yeah.
Forever. The other thing that we always talk about on the podcast is favorite food, local eats.
Oh, okay.
It's, I mean, you know me, I'm a big foodie. I love food.
This guy loves his food.
I know you do too.
Sure do.
So, you know, where you taking people to eat? What's your favorite spots in LA to like go find some great food?
Yes. I mean, you got to talk about tacos a little bit in LA. And I think the best taco spot is Angel's.
Angel's near the Target, but they have a bunch of
there's a couple.
spots.
There's a couple.
What do you get in Angel?
There's only one thing to get, my brother. Absolutely, the Al Pastor.
Al Pastor. Oh, it's so good. You get in a burrito or some tacos?
I'm going with the tacos. Yeah, but the burrito is really good too. And that's actually the best burrito in all of LA, in my opinion.
It's ridiculously good.
It's so good.
And they don't skimp.
They do not skimp, dude. They do not. And, you know, you can judge an Al Pastor place by how big the meat wheel is, you know. Some places, like, it's a small little guy.
Right.
Because they go through that entire thing every day.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go to a spot and it's got a giant wheel of Al Pastor just rotating, you know that place is bomb because they go through that entire thing every night.
Yeah.
And at Angel's, it's the big boy.
See, now I want to go there for dinner tonight. It's that place. I haven't been there in a minute. So I want to know, what's your typical workflow day like? Like getting up, mixing, or what are you doing every day?
The typical routine. So I'll wake up around like 7-ish and I'll do some like cleaning around the house, you know, get that over with. And then I'm usually at the computer at around 8:30 or 9-ish, something like that. And the first hour or so, I'm blasting off emails.
Right.
And during that time, I'm also listening to music. So I got Spotify going. I've got like a bunch of playlists of like songs I like to listen to like warm up my ears. Yeah, good mixes.
Yeah, that's smart.
And like, I'll kind of calibrate myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Where like I'll hear something, I'm like, man, this mix sounds like kind of dark today. Like, I'm a little stuffed up. Okay, I got to keep that in mind. Or something sounds like really bright. You know, I'm kind of just like waking up my ears a little bit. I go through all my emails and mark the to-do stuff. Once I kind of go through everything that needs to be labeled as to do for the day, then I hit pause on Spotify, and I'll usually start with notes. So I'll like open up whatever session needs to be edited, send off those notes, and then that also kind of helps calibrate my ears a little bit more as well, because I'm listening to mixes again. And then after that, I just start on whatever mixes I need to do for the day.
Right.
I'll usually do like 2 mixes a day.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a hard stop at 6:30.
Good.
Unless I need to go later, which happens, you know, maybe like a couple times a month.
Again, a
probably.
little bit easier when like you work by yourself and you
Yeah.
can just be like, okay, like I'm gonna end today. Like
Exactly.
unless someone's on the hard timeline, which
Yeah.
happens all the time.
And I also forgot to mention, after I do my emails, before I start doing notes, I listen to the mixes that I did the day prior. And usually I'll have to do like one or two little edits.
Right.
And then I send those off.
Smart.
Okay.
I want to move on to the first song discussion here.
Yes.
Hate Me If It Helps by Alexander 23.
Classic.
Classic. I have a very distinct memory of when I first heard that song.
Wow.
Came out, it was on New Music Friday. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Alexander 23. I think
Cool.
almost everything he does is incredible. But when I first heard that song, I was really blown away. I don't know, it's my favorite kind of song where it's like crazy dynamics and it just sounds so good. And I knew that Alexander was working with Dan, and Dan usually works with I forget his main mixer guy's name.
Michael.
Yeah, Michael. So I've never met him, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that he was mixing it.
Yeah.
And then I looked and I was like, oh, Yanni mixed it.
Yeah.
And this sounds amazing as usual. So I was like very like stoked to see that. Like,
yeah.
I like being blown away by something that like a friend does.
That's the best.
Yeah.
Totally. And I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome.
No, I mean that everything you do with Alex like always sounds really great. And I know that's a lot of production as well, but
of course, yeah.
Not to take anything away from him. But the one thing that I really love about that song, and you do it a lot with Alex, is how the vocal is being treated.
Mm-hmm.
It's super upfront and it's dry, but it's not dry.
Mm-hmm.
It always sounds like there's some kind of small verb or slap on there. What's in that song, and just with Alex's voice in general, what's your approach to getting it to be so upfront and present?
Yeah. I mean, for that one, it's probably pretty simple. You know, it probably is just like a short room reverb that they had already printed or something like that, or a slapback.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's nothing crazy.
Right.
It's the tools that we all have. I think for his vocal, the trick is to make it bright and get nice crispy top end.
Yeah.
Without it getting harsh.
Right. And I think you guys do that really well.
Yeah.
On all of his stuff.
Nice.
What's your, like, is that, I mean, I'm sure you're getting great sounds coming in from him, but what's your approach to kind of tame any harshness that may come from making a vocal bright like that?
Totally. I'll use a de-esser. You know,
good old de-esser.
Yeah. I'll boost the top end. So I'll usually use the Isotope Vintage EQ, which is like a Pultec EQ. And I could do the same thing with just any Pultec style EQ, where I'm boosting the top end, like the highest frequency, whatever that is. I think like 16K or what something.
I never use that vintage EQ. I gotta start messing with it.
It's a good one, dude.
Everything they make is great, so it's like,
I use that a ton.
Yeah, noted.
Yeah, I set the boost to the highest frequency and the highest Q, and I also set the cut to the highest frequency.
Oh.
And it does like a nice little shape where it ducks around 4K. There's a little dip there.
Right.
And then the top end above that just goes like almost parabolic.
Wow.
Goes way up. So you're getting a lot of 7K and up, just like skyrocketed.
Right.
But right below that, around 4K, it's smoothed out a little bit.
Right.
And you kind of finesse this shape by tweaking the cut and tweaking the Q factor. And you kind of just play with those three. There's only 3 knobs you got to attach there.
Right.
And that creates a really nice, smooth top end boost. And then after that, I'll use a de-esser or something like that.
Right.
And for that, I like to use the Pro C2.
Okay.
Except I just use the sidechain filter that's built in.
Okay. Filter
out up until 10K ish, and maybe use one of the bell, because there's like that little EQ section below.
Yeah.
And I'll find like where is it most pointy, and just bump it right there. And highest ratio.
Yeah.
Fastest attack, fastest release. Set to clean mode, I think it is.
Okay.
And look ahead on as well.
Yeah.
So that's the money de-esser setting right there.
That's a really interesting technique.
Yeah.
Is that something that someone showed you, or kind of like just stumbled upon yourself by like?
I've just stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
I use Pro C2 so much that I've like I want to use that plugin for like everything.
Yeah.
Because I know it so well.
Right.
So I can get better results with Pro C2 than the de-esser plugin, for example, just because I know how Pro C2 works
Right.
and how it functions and
Yeah.
how like all the different modes react. And it's the cleanest one for me.
Yeah.
By a long shot.
Yeah. That's smart. It's like, that's the other thing too. It's like, I mean, you know me, I'm like plugin addicted.
Yeah.
But I mostly like that for creative purposes, where like I get new plugins that inspires me to like I like not knowing what I'm doing when I'm creating.
Yeah.
And you can only really get that with like a new toy.
That's so true.
Where I'm like, I don't know what this does. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see what happens.
For knobs, it sounds cool.
But I will say, like, when I'm mixing, you know, or like doing my rough mix, it's like I'm using tools that I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
Just because, like, okay, I know what this does.
Mhm.
I don't want to do anything crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way too.
Yeah.
Like I'm using 3-4 plugins constantly.
Yeah.
And I just know them really well.
That's smart. I mean, let's like learn what you have, guys. It's really important. Another thing that you always do well, but especially well in this song, are acoustic guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have any, I don't know if for that song in particular, but do you have any tricks that you use? Or the one that I always like to ask about acoustic guitars is, are you compressing them or are you using any specific EQ on it?
Mm-hmm. I feel like acoustic guitars are so dependent on the recording.
Right.
Like if it's recorded well, then you don't need much. And I know for sure that song, the acoustics were recorded very well.
Yeah.
So they probably didn't take much.
Yeah.
But on a typical acoustic guitar, I would, my instinct isn't necessarily to compress them. Maybe a little bit with the Pro C2,
right.
Fastest attack, fastest release, limiter, basically,
right.
highest ratio, look ahead on.
Right, just to catch anything.
Catch like the super spiky stuff.
Yeah.
That like you can see as in the waveform, like
right.
that's just going to kill your headroom. So I'm like, let's just knock that out. Or I would use a clipper plugin, like the standard clip, to just shave off those crazy transients. But I'm not necessarily like looking for a compressed
acoustic
guitar, because I kind of want it to sound natural and spacious.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot about EQ. So
yeah.
it's like it's cutting the low end if it's boomy,
right?
Which a lot of the times it is. And for that, I'll use like a shelf, Pro Q3. Just
there you go.
Shelf down like around 100 hertz, maybe a little bit above that. Sometimes it's not there. It's like a little bit above 100 hertz. Like you leave the low stuff kind of alone, but you do a little cut around like 130 or something.
Right.
And I hate giving like specific numbers because it's always different. But
yeah.
You know
the general thing, it's like I think things like this, you know, when you see all like the clips on Instagram and TikTok where it's like great tips.
Yeah.
Use it as a guide.
Yes.
It's never a hard and fast rule. It's like, it's a good, like, start there.
Yeah.
And then, like, move things around and then start using your ears. You know?
Exactly. And, like, a lot of the times it does work. Like, it's close to working. So it is a good starting point.
Yeah.
I also really like Saturn. I use that a ton.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm doing a very specific thing where I'm creating a band of just the mids, like, as narrow as I can get it.
Right.
Probably like a 12 dB slope on those filters. And I am just compressing with that little compress knob on Saturn, and doing some drive just in the mids. And I'm talking like between 500 and a K, 1K.
The sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So I'll move it around there a little bit and find a spot where it really just like it comes through nice. It's nice and woody and warm and in your face, but like not harsh. Because the harshness comes higher than that. It's like 1K and up. That gets a little harsh. So I'll find that like nice warmth in that frequency area. And I'll use Saturn to
bring it up there. I love Saturn.
Yeah.
Such that. And like, I mean, you know, I really like it, but I really like Spectre too.
Totally.
They're like a little bit different, but like when you want the different flavors,
the
different things that they do, it's fun to have.
I like Spectre to getting stuff to poke out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, it goes a long way, just like a 1 dB or 2 dB
it's crazy.
Move on Spectre, and like all of a sudden it's just like poking out really nicely.
The tiniest little moves on that guy does so much. It's kind of insane. Last thing I want to talk about that is that really incredible breakdown part where it's like,
of course. Yeah.
So again, I'm sure a lot of that was production choices, but on your end, did you have any trouble? It's not super clipped and limited. It still sounds really musical, but it's really powerful. Did you have any trouble when you were mixing that, or like trying to get it loud but not crazy?
That's definitely like the thing that was going through my head.
Yeah.
How do I get these parts, these like really in your face loud sections to like be super loud and jump out at you, while also like making sure the overall volume was nice and loud.
Yeah.
So it was like, how do I get something loud to be louder and then less loud? It's like we're reaching a ceiling at a certain point. And so I think for that one, it's a matter of like making sure the verses are kind of quiet so that you have some space to jump up from the verses. And again, it is a lot of instrumentation because those sections, that's when the live drums come in, the crashes, like tons of guitar layers come in. And I think I'm like boosting a ton of top end on guitars and the cymbals, just creating like, because there's a difference in volume,
right? But
you also want to create a contrast in tonal stuff. So it's like kind of warm and dark-ish in the verses, and then in the hits, it's super bright.
Yeah, track comes alive at that moment.
Yeah, it's really, like a perceived loudness, and so ton of top end.
It's like introducing different EQ sections and not solely relying on, because I wanted to think it was like super limited and clip, but that's really not what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
I'm hearing kind of exactly what you're describing because you did it.
Nice. Yeah. I'm sure there is some clipping in there too.
No, obviously. But it doesn't seem like it's like, it reminded me of the big Billie Eilish song where the last song on the record where it gets crazy at the end and they're like really clipping like on purpose.
Stylistically.
Yeah. It's like, that's what I thought it was at first, but then I was like, oh no, it's not, they're not doing the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
In a great way. So the next song I wanted to talk about was Mr. Forgettable by David Kushner. Really, I mean, everything he does is really cool, and there's a reason why he's blowing the fuck up right now. How'd you get brought into mix that project? Because you've done a couple records with him now.
Yeah. So Alexander 23 produced that song.
There you go.
And he was like, let me have my guy mix it. So he connected us, and it was like a pretty straightforward mix.
Yeah. Are all the songs that you mixed for David, did Alexander do them?
No, just that one. And that was the first one. So after we did that one, then I started working with him with other producers as well.
That's great, man. That's nice. I mean, you do good work, and good work brings in more work.
It's always the best when that happens.
Yeah. And you're also like so easy to work with too.
Nice.
It just makes it easy. The thing I want to talk about that was also his vocal. He has such a unique, deep sounding vocal.
Totally.
So did you have any like trouble mixing his vocal and bringing out different frequencies than you normally would?
I think for that one and for all of his stuff that I've worked on, it's boosting a lot of top end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because when I get it, when I receive the stems, they're dark and it's vibey and cool. And like, I want to maintain that though. Right. So it's a balance of like, well, you want it to sound moody and emotional and like what you said, like dark, but you also want to have like clarity. And so again, I use the Ozone Vintage EQ.
There you go.
Go with that top end, just go to town. I'm boosting top end left and right. It's a lot of top end.
Yeah, I mean, so with that, I guess attenuation, it really helps craft it in a way where it's not too much.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll also, like, I think for his stuff specifically, it's all very dark. The whole mix is dark. So I'll start on the mix bus.
Okay.
So I'll put that on the mix bus and I'll kind of play with top end boost, low end boost, the low end boost and cut thing, the top end boost and cut thing. Yeah. Usually there's a spot in the mid range, like around 1.5K or 2K, something like that, where I can do a little dip.
Right.
I'm kind of just like doing a little bit of a smiley face curve.
Right.
And honestly, that EQ on the mix bus is like 50% of the mix a lot of the time.
Okay.
I can get very close just with that. And, you know, it's a trade-off. Like, I might do the top end and like the instruments sound really nice, but the vocal is now harsh. So I'll like maybe back it off a little bit or leave it on there, but now darken the vocal a little bit,
Right.
or just move that EQ to the instrumental bus.
Yeah. Are you mostly a mixing through your mix bus kind of guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. I kind of need to, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because it changes things a bit.
Of course.
The mix bus isn't super heavy handed for me though.
Right.
But it's the starting point. It's definitely the starting point.
Yeah. It's the North Star.
It is.
It's
truly.
like, this is where we're going, and how do we get it to fit within there?
Got to follow it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask this question a little later, but I think it kind of pertains to what we're talking about now, where I think his songs and the songs that you've mixed for him, but especially in this one, is that you managed to find a really good balance of making it sound lo-fi, but also hi-fi at the same time.
Yeah.
Where it's like that guitar, it's got a very specific vibe to it where like it sounds like it was a shitty recording, but in like the best way.
Yeah.
And like saying, but I don't know, what was your approach when you work on his kind of stuff to like find that balance?
Try not to lose the vibe.
Right.
Maintain the vibe as much as possible, but enhance it. So like, how do you make it feel lo-fi and intimate and like it was a bedroom beat?
Right.
Because that character is nice.
That's what it is. I think that's why he's gotten so big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that, but also like expand it to be like a little bit more open and just like a little bit more big, I guess.
Yeah.
Cleaner.
It's like polished, like that little bit of polishing on
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Like how do I polish this to where it brings out the lo-fi-ness and it doesn't just like get rid of it.
Right.
And I think it's like boosting the top end. I really do.
Yeah.
It's boosting the top end because the character of the sound or the character of each sound is in the mid-range. So that's where like the lo-fi stuff is.
Right.
That's where like the grit is at. So I kind of will leave that alone a little bit and like kind of frame around it. So like maybe it's boosting some low end and boosting top end, or getting rid of mud or pulling some instrumentation down to create more space for the mid-range to be kind of funky and in your face.
Yeah.
But like I try and leave that stuff alone and just frame around it.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, it's like, it was the one thing when I was like listening to Mr. Forgettable for the first time in a minute yesterday and today, where I was like, damn, I think that's what the best artists who are like these bedroom lo-fi artists, when they blow up, it's like, yeah, it's because they found that balance of making it still sound bedroomy and lo-fi, but also like it can be played on top 40 radio.
Totally.
So I don't know many bedroomy songs that sound super bedroomy that make it past a certain point.
Totally.
Just because it's, the average listener's ears want that crispiness in a way.
Sure. Just like a little bit of clarity, I think is nice.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Something kind of interesting about that song also in specific, that one was recorded and then slowed down.
Oh.
Yeah. So when I got the stems from Alexander, he was like, heads up, like these are recorded at whatever BPM. And I'm pretty sure David wants this to be slower. Like, so David took home like the day of bounce or something like that and messed around with it and like slowed it down in Logic or something. I don't know. And then he was like, this is dope. Like, I like the slowed down version. And so I had to figure out a way to slow it down and mix it at the same time.
Right.
And I'm sure that kind of added to the lo-fi vibe.
I mean, did he re-record the vocal, or was like everything slowed down?
Everything is slowed down.
Wow, I could not tell. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you slow it down, or did they slow it down?
I slowed it down.
What did you? I'm curious. What algorithm are you using to slow it down? Are you like picking and choosing for each part, or like?
No. I either just did polyphonic in Pro Tools for all of them, or there's a chance I did rhythmic for any drum stuff.
Right.
I feel like if I had thought about it, I probably would have done the rhythmic for the percussive stuff.
Right.
But I feel like polyphonic would have worked just as well. So I did polyphonic on all of the stems, and I had the reference that David sent over, which was the slowed down version. and I just like warped all the stems to just match it exactly.
What he did.
Yeah. And the pitch stayed the same though.
Right. Yeah.
Same
No, that's
pitch,
what I figured. Because otherwise, you just would have used Fair Speed at that point.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it's like it sounds great. I'm like very surprised. Was it like a huge tempo shift, or was it something pretty minor? If you had to guess,
something in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, like significant, but it didn't like destroy the audio.
No, it sounds. I'm like I can't express how surprised I am to hear that.
Like for David's stuff, I think most of the songs that I've done for him are some sort of speed adjustment.
Crazy.
He loves that type of thing.
That's I think it's always super important to like check your BPM. Because so often I find that like it's usually speeding up, especially most for pop music, but like just doing that puts like it in a new light, and it's almost always better.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a little bit about me, but like Build a Bitch used to be way slower.
Wow.
When it was brought to Suburban and Ely, they sped it up, and they made the right choice.
Cool.
It was like, I think they brought it up by like 10 BPM. Like, a lot. And it was such a good choice.
Yeah, it's like that new perspective.
Yeah.
They listen to it and they're like, oh, like, this is sick, but it needs to be just like 10 BPM faster.
So yeah, and that was like such a huge learning moment for me, where like almost every song I'll do a bounce, and then now I can do it in Pro Tools because they have the Elastique.
Yeah.
My bounce, I'll just make it slower and faster.
Oh, nice.
Just to like kind of hear.
Just to feel it out.
Just to feel, and it's like, you can usually tell right away.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this feels great faster.
Totally.
You know, it's a good little experiment to do. The last question I had on this one, and I think it's not even a specific question to Mr. Forgettable, but the one thing I always appreciate about your mixes is that the low end always feels really good.
Nice.
What's your approach to having a really... the low end you always do, for me at least, because I know the before and after, is even and present and harmonic in there. What's kind of your North Star for low end?
Yes. It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
That's the golden ticket, you know, how to get that nice low end.
Yeah.
I've found that like when people say, oh, this mix is, the low end is so tight, the way to get a tight low end is just to not have a ton of low end, honestly. Like, you don't need a ton of low end in your bass, for example. Right. Or like maybe your bass can just come down in volume, and that'll give you a tight low end. You know, you just carve out the low end a little bit. You know, don't go crazy. Don't filter everything out, but like, you know, don't go crazy boosting low end as well.
Right.
I feel like I went through a phase where I'm like, oh, I need a better low end. I'm going to boost low end on everything. It's going to be really in your face and awesome, but it's just a muddy mess. So now I'm like, man, what I like to do is I'll listen to the song while I'm mixing, and I'll mute the bass, and then I'll bring it back in. And if when I mute it, like the whole song falls apart and it's like, whoa, like the whole floor just fell out, then it's too loud. And I'll kind of go back and forth. I'll bring it back in, and I'll turn it down a little bit, and then I'll mute it again. And I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I lost something, but like we're still grooving and stuff. Right. It still feels good. And then I'll bring it back in. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the sweet spot. Because monitoring bass is so tricky as well.
Yeah.
Where it's so hard to get a judgment on if it's too loud or not. So doing this technique where like I'm muting it and unmuting it gives me like perspective shift constantly. And I can go off of that. Yeah. And so I like to do that.
So we're on to our last segment here.
Okay.
It's a little segment we're calling Plug or Unplug.
Plug or Unplug.
Plug or Unplug. So I'm going to name a plug-in or a piece of gear.
Yeah.
And plug if it's something you love and you use a ton. Unplug if it's something you're like, I don't like how it sounds, or like, I don't like how it functions.
Say no more. I'm familiar with the format. I like this.
And
like
bypass if you've never used it and you don't know too much about it.
Bypass. Okay.
Bypass.
What's make it active?
Oh, I don't know. I guess bypass.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, make it active. Okay. So the first one being Isotope Ozone's Vintage Tape.
Vintage tape.
Yes.
Plug in.
Plug.
Okay, plug. You're right. Just plug.
You're like, it is a plug-in.
Yes. Okay, plug. I'm not. It's new format. Okay.
Love it.
Just plug.
Yeah. Well, so why do you love it so much? What are you using it for?
I just used it recently on an Alexander 23 song. Okay. He was like mix sounds great. Give it like 10% more heat. And I'm like, okay, what is heat? And I perceive that as like tape saturation, that type of thing. And I like that plugin because it can be pretty subtle, I think. And the interface is nice and clean. I don't need a ton of like the UAD tape stuff. Also good too, but like, man, those knobs are tiny.
I'm using
like,
them less and less because it's like
it's just hard to use.
Yeah.
Even though they sound nice.
Yeah.
You only have like 4 knobs or something. You got a nice little EQ section, a top end, a low end boost, a drive, harmonics, and a bias. And that's great. Like all I need is that.
Yeah. No, it's great. I like the simple plugins.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want too many buttons.
Yes.
And it's like the more complex a plugin is or a piece of hardware, it's like I'm just sticking to presets.
Totally.
And
you kind of have to. It's like you can't, it's hard to tweak stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, cool. I'm just like, I'll run through presets and see if it is something like cool to my sound.
Yeah.
More on like, not even the mixing phase, more in like the production creative phase where I'm like, yeah, we'll see what this does.
Totally.
We'll find out.
Totally. That one also, it's like, I think it's a good mixing plugin.
Yeah.
In that it's not crazy heavy handed.
It's so subtle.
It's subtle.
I never use that for creative purposes.
Totally. Like Toop, for example, that one's like heavy handed.
Yeah.
And the second you put it on, it sounds dark and fuzzy and nice.
Yeah.
But like, you have to really intentionally want to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times for me, I'm working within that 5% wiggle room here. Like we're just doing a little bit of finessing
right
here. So the ozone tape comes in nicely.
Yeah. It's perfect for that.
Yeah.
Next piece of gear is hardware unit, the Unfairchild 670. If you've ever had the pleasure of using one.
I don't think I've used one.
Yeah.
I would like one. That'd be cool.
I wasn't sure if you had. I've never used one, but I've heard like everyone's like, they're game changing. They sound so good.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to say make an active on that one.
It's like, for our listeners, if you don't know, it's like a $10,000, $12,000 piece of gear. It's like a big guy. But
it
apparently
looks cool, and I'm sure it sounds awesome. But I'm also like I have no hardware.
Oh wow!
So although that would be a nice one.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to change my whole workflow.
Yeah.
I'd rather prioritize having a really good workflow over like a $10,000 subtle advantage with the hardware stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard nowadays, especially with like recall.
Oh yeah.
With stuff where it's as a mixer, like I said, like you're opening up anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 records a day.
Yeah, at least. Totally.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like to do constant recall on that, it's too much in today's world.
Yeah. If I ever did go down that path, it would be a stationary mix bus where the knobs just don't get changed.
They don't get changed. Exactly. You're mixing into that.
Yeah.
And like that's I mean, whenever I do outboard things, even just on the way in, I really try not to touch anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are my settings. I'll like tweak it every once in a while if I need be.
Yeah.
But like it's too much work. It's not like back in the day where like producers would be working on an entire album for like that month.
Yeah.
And they would like have, people write everything down or put tape on shit.
Totally.
It's too much work.
Yeah, or they would continue to mix it until it's done.
Yeah.
I don't have that pleasure. Like I'm jumping from song to song. Sometimes I don't get notes back for a month.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, well I can just open it back up.
Right. And it's the same. Yeah, it's too much. As much as I would love to do like a custom vocal chain for every person, it's like totally. I found that it's not worth it. And like for me to like sit there and be like, excuse me guys, I just gotta take this picture and put it in the folder.
Exactly, dude.
Or like write in the comment section in Pro Tools like exactly what the chain was. It's like it's too much.
It's kind of a lot.
It's a lot. Next plugin is Good Hertz's Faraday Limiter.
I used that one on an Alexander 23 song as well.
There you go.
I guess plug.
Yeah.
But I rarely use that one. I rarely use it.
Yeah, it's a vibier limiter.
It is.
It like does a thing, and when you want it, it's great, and when you don't want it, it's like, whatever. I use it a lot when it's an instrument that's really quiet, or I played something very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I almost use it as like a way to like boost.
Cool.
I just like the function where it's like I can drag the one thing down and then bring the other thing up, and it's like, okay, cool, I can use this instead of bringing the clip up or something.
Totally.
And it'll also, at the same time catch the peaks.
Yeah.
In like a good way.
And it gives like a little warmth, maybe.
Right.
So that's a good use for it.
I like warm things.
Me too.
The Burl B2 bomber, analog to digital converter. You ever mess with those?
I have not ever messed with those. Yeah, I've heard those are kind of on the warmer side as well, where like they actually are pretty colored.
Yeah, they're great.
That's cool.
I know a couple people that will use, I use it, everything I record now goes through it.
Cool.
And it's incredible. I think it's one of the best things I've ever bought.
Nice.
I know a lot of people that are now printing mixes through it.
Cool.
As well. Because it does like a tape thing. It like kind of like does that like squeeze and saturation. Yeah. That's like nice. It's like, oh, this does a thing.
Yes.
And you can't really mess with the settings a little bit. Like it's just like,
you're right.
Like this is what it is. It's just going through, it's just hitting these circuits and it's like doing a thing and it sounds good.
It's subtle, but it's tasteful. And
that's like cool. That's the thing I'm telling people to get now, where it's like, again, this is more producers. It's like, get yourself a good vocal chain. And like, once you get that, like the Burl is a great thing to get.
Nice.
It just like, I've said it a lot on the pod, but it just, to me, it makes everything sound expensive.
Yeah.
It like just adds that little extra touch.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Man.
And like my ideology behind it too is it's almost like working on a console.
Yeah.
Where like when you work on a console, everything is being recorded through the same thing and it's hitting those same circuits and it kind of like enables everything to like blend together.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. And that's why I'm like, cool, almost everything I do goes through that.
Totally.
Because like now they're all hitting that same kind of thing and it sounds like they're recorded in the same, I don't know. It's like,
I
don't know if it's true or not, but in my head it makes sense.
That's the only thing that matters. Right? Yeah. It's like a built-in uniform sound, cohesiveness.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I'm very curious about this next one. I want your honest 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
God particle.
Oh yeah. That's a controversial one.
Oh yeah.
I think plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
What do you like about it? What do you maybe don't like about it?
I like a lot about it. I wish you could adjust the multi-band compression stuff like a little bit more. Like it'd be nice to be able to change the threshold on each band a little bit. Like I don't need even attack and release times for each individual band. But to be able to just adjust the threshold a little bit would be kind of nice. Overall, I like it. I like the top end boost that you can do on it. Just that 3-band EQ is really powerful. So,
are you using it anywhere else besides the mix bus at all? Or
I'm not.
Yeah.
And even then, I'm rarely putting it on the mix bus.
Right.
But I get so many sessions that have it on there.
And Exhibit A, me.
Yeah, and it sounds good.
Yeah.
Like. It's a great starting point.
I like it because I'm very pro working as quickly as I can.
Totally.
And that is a plugin that just enables me to like be like, cool, this sounds great.
Yeah.
And I can get things loud quickly.
Yep.
And then like, you know, it's a problem whether it's good or bad, but it's like, cool, this has now become a part of the record. I've mixed the record, I've produced through this.
Totally.
It's hard to take it off once it's been on there.
Yeah.
For so long.
Yeah. It's a good plugin. It's a good one. I do like how it has those visual cues.
Yeah.
To kind of like tell you where you're at.
Yeah.
Like if you have too much low end or too much top end, whatever. Yeah. That's kind of fun to reference.
That's good. It's a fun little. Listen, I like bringing up the controversial ones.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next one.
Yeah.
So for you and our listeners already know, but I ask this plugin on every pod because it's very controversial. No, it's CLA vocals.
Oh, CLA vocals. Okay. I mean, if you say any answer besides plug, you're crazy. Like that is probably the most important plugin ever made.
Yeah.
So many vocals have gone through it. Would I put it on in one of my mixes? Definitely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. But it lives on the mix bus actually for me.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Good. The whole mix is hitting the quarter delay, I hope.
100%.
Good. That's what we want.
Absolutely. Gets a nice CLA effect right in there. But it's fast, man. Yeah. You know, you pop it on there. You get a crispy top end compression. It's a great plugin, dude.
I think that's the best and most honest answer I've heard.
Yeah.
Where like everyone has really hot takes where it's like, Unplug, I think the thing sounds like shit, and people are like, plug, it sounds amazing.
Sure.
And it's like, I think at the end of the day, it's a taste thing.
Yeah.
And again, like it's the same reason why I like God Particle.
Where
it's like, cool, if I can have tools in my belt pocket, in my pocket that can enable me to work quickly.
Yeah.
And like, if for someone at CLA Vocals, which it was for me for many years, before when I was recording on this SM7 as my main vocal mic, it was like, I could throw that on there. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Great starting point. Now that I have a much nicer chain.
Yeah.
Like, you see the vocals I send you. It's like, I'm not doing too much to my vocals anymore.
Totally.
Because the chain is like 95% of the sound now.
Yeah. And then when it does need a little bit something, you just pull up an EQ and you address the specific thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like it is a good starting point, CLA Vocals. And then, you know, ideally in a perfect world, you kind of learn how to reuse those tools that are baked in with very limited functionality on their own.
Right, exactly.
Instead of just a one treble knob, you use an EQ. And then you can kind of fine tune it a little bit.
Right, you do it your way as opposed to how like the plugin does it.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then the last plugin in the segment is always a very highly used plugin.
Yeah.
FabFilter's Pro L2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolute plug.
Yeah.
Absolute plug.
Yeah. What do you like about it over other limiters?
For me, it's not my main limiter.
Okay.
Like I use the Ozone Maximizer as my first front to combat.
Yeah.
You know, after that, I'll put the Pro L2. And the Pro L2 is kind of nice because for me, it's clean. I use it in a clean way.
Right.
It can get dirty.
Right. If you wanted to.
If you wanted to, but like it can be nice and clean and full. And again, simple to use, man. Just boom, turn it up. I do mess a lot with the other settings, like the look ahead, the attack and release, and the link. I always have that one linked 100%.
Okay.
I feel like it sounds nice like that. And I have the Ozone completely unlinked. And so that one's doing like a lot of left-right limiting.
Yeah, for our listeners who might not know what the linking is, can you explain?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's basically telling the compressor to react separate left and right channels, basically like two limiters essentially, or have those kind of move the same way. Right. I guess that was kind of a weird way to describe it. But.
So like even for our listeners too, where it's like, you know, at least on Pro Tools, I forget on the other ones where you can have like multi-mono or stereo.
Yeah.
It's that same idea.
Same exact idea. Right. Totally.
But you're doing it within the plugin as opposed to like choosing it beforehand.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like Ozone unlinked and I like Pro L2 linked. And yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about it, man.
No, it's just clean. It's a great plugin.
Just clean.
Yeah.
I just use it for some volume.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm trying to get crunchy limiter settings, then I'll use the Ozone Maximizer.
Right.
And like that, the clipper setting is really nice. I think you can play with the different, what do you call them? Little algorithms.
Right.
And that one I'm a little bit more excited about because it has a sound and it's contributing to the mix.
Right.
In my workflow, but the Pro L2, that is sure contributing a little bit, but I'm just using that as like a utility.
Loudness.
A little bit of loudness.
Yeah, it's what I've been finding with these the last plug or unplug plugins or hardware is that like they're most widely used because they're always great.
Yeah.
I think every single time I've asked the last plugin, it's always been plug.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, of course I use that. Like, why wouldn't I?
Totally.
And it's like, because it's great.
It's
and
great.
That's why everyone has an SM7.
Exactly.
It's like, they do the thing. They're not the best mic, but they never sound bad.
True.
They don't always sound as good.
Yeah, it's not like the sexiest mic ever.
No,
but it's nice.
No, it gets the job done.
Yeah. I'm also, I'm not mastering stuff. I feel like if you ask a master engineer, they're gonna
have a lot more.
They're gonna have a lot of opinions about the limiter.
I know. I want to get some mastering engineers on here eventually.
Yes.
And because that's a world that I'm so not connected to. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we have to end here. As usual, I've taken up far too much of your time. But dude,
what a pleasure, dude.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Always great to hang with you. Thank you so much for sharing. Man, you shared so many great little tips and insights.
Nice.
I'm definitely going to start using that vintage EQ a little bit more based off this talk.
Check it out, dude.
Yeah, I've barely messed with it, so I'm excited. But dude, again, thank you so much, and thank you to our listeners.
Dude, thank you, Justin. I cherish our friendship so much, and the fact that we get to work together. And this podcast is awesome, dude. I'm so excited for them to come out and to just dive in.
Amazing, dude.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.